Hello and welcome to this video on how I can use the mark scheme for my revision. Today we're concentrating on Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. For those of you who've watched my Macbeth video, I'm going to do something slightly different with this one. Um, in the novella, you'll obviously get presented with a section of the text. However, unlike with Macbeth, um, with the novel, I've revised the themes and the author's purposes. So I already know what I want to write about, no matter what the question. If I've watched my videos, I know what the themes are, I know what the ideas are. I can just trust those to give me all the marks. And so I'm going to try and demonstrate that by not reading the indicative comment here. But all I'm going to do is count the bullet points. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's not a bad spread. That really, if I'm going to make all those 9 points, that will be 9 quotations from here. That's all I have to find. And because my structure is going to be write about a quotation in this text, then relate it to the novel as a whole, I have potentially another 9 quotations to find from the rest of the novel, or at least 9 things that happen, 9 references from the rest of the novel. Well, you might ask, what about these bullet points here on context? Well, as I showed you in my Macbeth video, I'll be writing about the context when I deal with each of those. That's when I'll bring the context in. So these won't be separate points, they'll already be included. So let's get rid of that bit of the mark scheme and let's focus on the extract. Okay, remember that this is the question. The bullet points are there, just there to get you writing, but they're not marked individually. So really that's the question. Starting with this extract, how does Stevenson present Hyde as a frightening outsider? Well, you'll notice that this doesn't ask me to write about Stevenson's viewpoint, doesn't ask me to write about the themes, but I know the mark scheme rewards that, and I know that that's what I've done in my revision. I've thought about the themes all the time I've been revising. So, because I've revised the themes, my exam tactic is simply to go through the extract. As soon as I find something that reminds me about one of the themes, I quote it, and then I find something else in the novel that is related to that. Well, let's just have a look. So this extract comes from Mr. Utterson, about Mr. Utterson when he has just met Mr. Hyde for the first time. "We have common friends," said Utterson. "Common friends," echoed Mr. Hyde, a little hoarsely. "Who are they?" "Jekyll, for instance," said the lawyer. "He never told you?" "He never told you," cried Mr. Hyde with a flush of anger. "I did not think you would have lied. So my theme here is hypocrisy. So my thesis statement at the beginning of my essay is going to be Stevenson wishes to expose the hypocrisy of middle-class London, and in particularly middle-class men. And then I would launch into this quotation here. Hyde is an outsider because he, although evil, is completely honest. He doesn't bother to dissemble, to put on a false face. He is just who he is, whereas everybody else in the novella puts on a false front. So Utterson does the same. He's lying here, and Mr. Hyde has exposed him because we know, as well as Hyde, that Jekyll could never have told Mr. Hyde anything. Mr. Utterson anything about Hyde, because that would endanger Jekyll. Furthermore, we've got the layout of Jekyll's house and how that's symbolic of his own facade. So we've got that one street that he has the entrance to, which is gentrified, although in a street that has seen better days and is losing its prestige. And then the entrance at the back, which is on another street, which is far more sinister and sordid, and that's where Hyde goes. And obviously that symbolizes the duality of man. So now I've brought an extra theme, as well as the hypocrisy. I've brought in the idea of duality as well, with extra references elsewhere in the novel. Now I go to my next quotation, wherever that may be. "Come," said Mr. Utterson, "that is not fitting language." The other snarled aloud into a savage laugh, and the next moment, with extraordinary quickness, he had unlocked the door and disappeared into the house. Well, I've got that quotation. So I can focus on Hyde's animal-like tendencies. I can say that Stevenson has included that in order to appeal to the Gothic tastes of his readership. How this is a symbol of his evil nature. We can look at the sibilance of snarled and savage, and then we can link that to what happens to Hyde, because he is an outsider, elsewhere in the novel. So we get that savagery where he bludgeons Sir Danvers Carew to death, and his temper is made much worse because Jekyll has made him even more of an outsider. He has kept Hyde locked inside Jekyll's own body, if you like, for nearly a year. And it's that incarceration where Hyde hasn't been out for nearly a year that causes such savagery. We can link that to Stevenson's wider purpose, which is to point out that our own innate savagery is difficult to control, and he's using Hyde as a symbol of what we all keep locked up inside us. Okay, well, we need another quotation. Well, let's read on. "The lawyer stood a while when Mr. Hyde had left him, the picture of disquietude. Then he began slowly to mount the street, pausing every step or two, and putting his hand to his brow like a man in mental perplexity. The problem he was thus debating as he walked was one of a class that is rarely solved. Mr. Hyde was pale and dwarfish. He gave an impression of deformity without any nameable malformation. He had a displeasing smile. He had borne himself to the lawyer with a sort of murderous mixture of timidity and boldness, and he spoke with a husky whispering and somewhat broken voice." Well, the sentence goes on, but I'm going to interrupt it to try and pick on a quotation. So I will pick on the pale and dwarfish. So this suggests again how he's an outsider and looked upon as inferior by other people in the novel. He's excluded by society, and I can link that elsewhere in the novel, where we actually see him becoming less dwarfish and larger, and that happens because he is becoming more powerful. I'm going to link that to Stevenson's symbolism, where he's suggesting that Hyde grows in power because our evil natures are actually more powerful than our good, and that's why ultimately Hyde overcomes Jekyll, because Stevenson is suggesting that our capacity for good will be dwarfed by our capacity for evil. Evil will win out. We think that we'll behave in good ways, but actually that's just a facade. Now I can be more exploratory. I can say that Utterson remarks on his deformity without any nameable malformation. So I can be arguing here that Stevenson shows that our own deformities are hidden, just as Hyde, and we could write about the choice of the name Hyde to symbolize this, just as Hyde is the hidden part of Jekyll, so we all hide our own malformation, which we can never name. And if we can't name it, then we can't stop it, and we can't choose to overcome evil if we can't give it a name. Another way of looking at it is that Stevenson might be suggesting that Hyde is completely unnatural. He is an earlier form of human being in evolutionary terms, and he might be suggesting that mankind is evolving, if you like, backwards. Hyde is the first example, but actually what's going to happen as we move into the future is that men will become increasingly evil, and their morality will become increasingly deformed or malformed. And I can link that to the context of the Gothic novel, the craze for the penny dreadfuls, and I can even link it as a harbinger, a forewarning of the kind of obsession with crime which reveals itself only a couple of years later with the Jack the Ripper killings. Okay, let's see if we can pick on another quotation. Um, all these points against him, but not all of these together could explain the hitherto unknown disgust, loathing, and fear with which Mr. Utterson regarded him. So here I could focus on the fear that Mr. Utterson has, and that presents Hyde as an outsider, obviously, because everybody reacts to him this way. But I can also use it as a way to suggest that what Utterson is afraid of is Hyde's representation of the future. And I can link that to Dr. Lanyon when he sees Hyde transform back into Jekyll. And so Lanyon can see where science is heading, and science is heading to create these monsters like Hyde. So Stevenson could be writing this as a huge warning about the massive development in science that's gone on, and warning society that actually these developments in science can only lead to evil and harm, as exemplified by Hyde. Okay, let's find another quotation. There must be something else, said the perplexed gentleman. There is something more if I could find a name for it. God bless me, the man seems hardly human. Something troglodytic, shall we say? So I'm going to focus on that because that brings in the idea of earlier forms of man. It's a reference to our evolution, and I can look at the novel as a reaction to Charles Darwin's introduction of the descent of man. And if you think of the title of his book about evolution, The Descent of Man, that shows man getting worse. It's not just how we are descended from someone else. The semantic field of descent is also to come from a height and come down. So there's an ironic interpretation of descent, which Stevenson gives real voice to when he creates Hyde, because Hyde descends in the literal sense from Jekyll, because he's created by Jekyll and comes from him, but also descends in that he is an evolutionary throwback, a worse version of Jekyll, and hence the word troglodytic. So I could see this novel now as Stevenson rejecting society in Britain and saying that actually in our society in Britain we're becoming more primitive, more dangerous, less moral, and contextually I can say, that's why he moved to America and then after that to Samoa, to escape the hypocrisy of British culture, or if you like, London culture. So ultimately, I can see the creation of Hyde as a way for Stevenson to suggest that he too is an outsider because he is so disgusted about what he sees in the capital. I can link that to the epidemic in prostitution. That's why he deliberately puts Hyde's private address in Soho smack bang in the middle of the red light district, which it was even then. So through Hyde, he holds up a mirror to society and says, this is what the men in your society are actually like. Let's not forget that all the main characters in this novella are male. Right, let's find another quotation. Or can it be the old story of Dr. Fell? Or is it the mere radiance of a foul soul that thus transpires through and transfigures its clay continent? Well, I'm going to focus on the religious language here, which is also echoed there. So Utterson is expressing the religious beliefs, the Christian beliefs of his readership. But in a wider contextual point, Stevenson himself rejected Christianity. He became an atheist. So again, we can see that he's quite critical of this Christian point of view, and that's why he gives it to Utterson, who he's already revealed as a bit of a hypocrite, lying to Hyde. Moreover, elsewhere in the novel, Jekyll's Christianity is a sign of his hypocrisy. He merely tries to do good things in order to present a good front, so that he is socially acceptable. And this links me to my next quotation, the last, I think, for oh my poor Harry Jekyll, if ever I read Satan's signature upon a face, it is on that of your new friend. So this melodramatic reference to Satan, again, is part of the genre of Gothic fiction that his readership would have enjoyed so much, but partly Stevenson is ridiculing that because obviously if he doesn't believe in God, he doesn't believe in Satan. And the irony of this, of course, is that anything that is satanic, this novella is saying is actually inside us. So if we take that idea of Hyde as the outsider again, we can now view that ironically, because Hyde, in my final analysis, is actually the insider. He is inside everybody. It's not Satan that makes us evil. It is our own evil natures. So there you have it. Loads of quotations. I didn't count how many I got. I was aiming for 9 that coming from the extract. I link them constantly to what goes on elsewhere in the novel, or if you prefer, the novella. I don't think the examiner will care what you call it. So this was a bit of an experiment. I predicted that just by linking the passage to what I'd already revised about the themes of the novella would allow me to hit all the bullet points without checking. So let's just go through. Have I written about Hyde's behaviour to Utterson? Yes. Utterson's behaviour to Hyde? Yes. Utterson's shock and confusion? Certainly his shock. I ignored the confusion. Utterson's attempt to understand his fear of Hyde? Yes, we looked at that in terms of religious terms and evolution. Use and effect of particular word choices? Well, obviously I did that all the way through. Focusing on Hyde's physical appearance? Yes, I did that. Did I write about Hyde's behaviour? Yes, I did in my discussion of what happens elsewhere in the novel. Use and effect of particular word choices to describe Utterson's reaction to Mr. Hyde? Well, that's really the same, actually. So, yes, I've done that. Effects of the mention of Satan? Big tick there. Use of triplets to reinforce Utterson's reactions? No, I quoted the end of the triplet, but I didn't point out it was a triplet. So the triplet was disgust, loathing, and fear. I didn't focus on Utterson's use of questions. I didn't mention them as questions per se. But I also mentioned a few other language features like sibilance, like symbolism. And if we go to the top of the indicative comments, examiners are encouraged to reward any valid interpretations. Answered might include some of the following. So I can reasonably confident with AO1 and AO2 that I'm easily on track by writing about the themes. Well, now let's look at the context. The ways in which social attitudes towards behaviour might impact on what is frightening. Well, we talked about the Gothic novel, the Penny Dreadful. Social attitudes about acceptability. Well, we talked about hypocrisy. The impact of evolutionary ideas. Yes, we talked about Darwin and the descent of man. Ideas about primitive nature within man. Well, I did focus on that, and we use that quotation of troglodytic. The relationship between the text and the Gothic genre. Yes, I've done that. So my method there has worked 100% really. So when it comes to the novel, and this isn't just with Jekyll and Hyde, by the way, when it comes to the novel, focus on the themes in your revision, what the author's purpose is, and that will guarantee that you get into the top mark. Well, let's leave this video by coming away from the indicative comment and go to the actual way that the examiner will come to their mark. The candidate's response is likely to be critical and exploratory. Yes, because I started with a thesis and I ended with Stevenson's viewpoint. In fact, I discussed Stevenson's viewpoint all the way through, so it's always exploratory. Was it well structured? Yes, because it always moved from the passage to the novel as a whole, and that structure was coherent all the way through. It takes a conceptualized approach. Yes, I'm putting forward an argument, which we began with hypocrisy and then looked at the other themes. Did it look at the full task? Yes, I had quotations from all over the novel and obviously the extract as well. Were all my quotations judicious? Yes, I zoomed in on particular words. Was my analysis fine-grained and insightful? Yes, that's where you've got the use of context and how that then shows your insight, because it always gives you evidence for what you're saying about Stevenson's purpose. Did we look at form and structure? Well, we did that when we were talking about the idea of its being in the Gothic genre and the penny dreadful. Was it supported by judicious use of subject terminology? Well, if there was a weakness in my explanations, I wasn't really paying attention to what terminology I was using. And so that if I replayed the video, I might find that I was a bit light in that. In writing, I trained myself to mention a bit of subject terminology every time I quote. So is it a personification, a metaphor, alliteration, sibilance, symbol, contrast, juxtaposition, whatever. But I don't think I was really skillful at that as I was speaking aloud. Did I have a convincing exploration of one or more ideas? Yes, I had loads of interpretations in there. So I hope you can see that that approach, going through the themes, will always get you the top marks. And even if you don't get all the marks, you'll still get enough to get into that top band. So good luck in the exam. Good luck in your revision. Don't forget to watch the rest of my videos so you absolutely know Stevenson's purpose. And don't forget to subscribe.